Call our meeting to order. Let minutes reflect all members are present. The first thing we'll do today is set the agenda with the approval of the minutes. Anybody like to change or do anything different on the agenda today?
Staff have no changes.
No changes? Okay, thank you.
Hearing none, I make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Madam President, I move to approve the August 12th, 2019 workshop minutes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Abstain.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the August 14th, 2019 regular meeting minutes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay. With that, we'll move to the consent agenda.
President Preiner, today we have 3 permits before you ready for Cap Rock. Staff have no changes or comments. We're happy to entertain any questions.
Any questions?
I just want to, hello, anything different? Okay, 19069. It has to do with the Washington Matamidi. It's a more complicated type of thing. It's the drainage that they're going to have, and some of the areas on the south part, then this all drains into eventually White Bear Lake, right? So is anybody that just can, it's pretty much guaranteed that we're going to be able to filter everything out before it gets there. Is that correct?
Nick?
I'm sorry, Manager Hockey, by the numbers, was it 1969?
Yeah, it's the one that, it's the middle one.
Thank you.
It's the final drainage, Washington County Public Works,
Okay.
069.
Well, let's go back to the,
I guess it's really sort of an engineering question with all the engineering that's done, and I trust they do a great job, and you all do in staff. It's just that it's going into areas that a lot of people are always concerned about.
sure, you read my mind. Certainly an engineering question.
You got back up.
President Preiner, Board of Managers, as you can see on the screen and also in your packet, the pink is the new impervious surface. There is an underground basin to treat that stormwater runoff, as well as the infiltration basin here in the front. Obviously, the water from that, once it's treated, does discharge some to the wetland to the south and otherwise to the storm sewer in the street in the front. So,
Could you speak up just a tiny bit?
I'm sorry. Is that,
Fine.
okay.
It's me, not you.
No, but it is, it's true, you were very quiet.
A little bit of both then. I'll increase the volume here. Pink is the impervious. The orange on the screen is an underground infiltration basin. The blue is a proposed infiltration basin on the surface. And then, of course, once the water is treated, and those basins represent the volume based on the standard within your rule, it does discharge across the landscape into the street or the storm sewer or the wetland to the south. So to Manager Hockey's question, yes, we are seeing that the project is in compliance.
In compliance, okay. Okay.
Madam President, a different one, if I could. Barbara, are you done?
Did you want to comment on that
I was
one?
going
I'm
to
done.
comment
Wait,
one more,
wait.
just a moment. Yeah. Okay, so one thing that wasn't so clear in the picture, but I've been reading in the narrative, it demonstrates that the blue line on the left-hand side that comes out of the tank, the underground tank, you see the proposed underground infiltration basin? That's going to be piped right to the city sewer, as I understand, stormwater sewer, correct?
Correct.
And so the increased amount, small increased amount of the parking lot pervious surface, we're going to change the direction of some of that so that it no longer goes south, it'll go to County Road 12 there and into the Matamidi storm sewer. So there'll be less water flowing towards the wetland in the southwest corner, correct?
Correct.
just to make sure that you understood that.
Yeah, and if it doesn't go to the wetland and it's going right into the sewer.
No, it's coming from the infiltration basin. You see those
Yeah, I
blue
see the
arrows?
infiltration and then
Yeah,
going
it
in
goes into
there.
the
Okay,
underground infiltration basin.
right.
It becomes treated, and then it's going to, in the very
In the
last part of
storm
this
sewer.
project, they're going to build a pipe and connect it up, and that permit and pipe issue is still going to come before us, some of that.
Okay.
President Preiner, Manager Waller, that is correct, John. Excuse me, Manager Waller, what you state. There is a interim condition where the city's project associated with the wetland on the south will come in the near future. The interim condition, if you will, is not in noncompliance with the district rule for bounce and inundation, and the engineer also checks to ensure that the change in the watershed is not a issue for the sustaining of the wetland.
It's not done right now. When is this supposed to come online? When is it going to? You said something about it's an interim thing. It's
The last thing you're going to build in the project is
and
going
then
to be
how?
that.
When will it get built?
It's a stipulation of this permit for the county. Let's see. Did I get that right? Stipulation 3, remove the temporary storm sewer outlet for the underground system from the wetland after phase 3 is complete.
After phase 3, and
Yeah.
and phase 3 is when?
It's undetermined to me,
So we don't know how long it's going to be that way.
I think Chris
correct.
has-
But the
Chris?
Madam President, I was just going to note that, again, they're meeting permit requirements under both the interim condition and what the final condition would be. So even though it's their intent to complete that next phase, they still would be meeting permit requirements even if that next phase does not occur.
Oh, they are. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Manager Bradley?
Thank you, President Preiner. On item 19-074, page 34, paragraph 6, second to last sentence. It reads, "The applicant must address the comments in the recommendations above." That's kind of like a new thing I've never seen before. What comments are we talking about? They must meet the CAPROC requirements? I mean,
Manager Bradley, I'd ask if you could back up to the location in the packet,
certainly.
please.
It's on
Thank you.
page 34 of the packet. It's paragraph 6 of the findings. The second to last sentence.
So that, to me, is a reference up to the recommendations section as a whole, which is kind of a generalized statement and probably not the best placement. It would seem to be just echoing the general format of the document.
It is A, confusing, and B, it subtracts from the requirement that they meet all the CAPROC requirements. So I would suggest you take that sentence out of
Yeah.
the.
Staff would agree, we could strike that.
Is that, remove it?
Remove it, yep. Any other questions on our consent agenda? Anything else? Then we'll go for a motion.
Madam President, I move that we conditionally approve the pending receipt of changes with the additional change I noted to remove a sentence from 19-074, removing the sentence, "The applicant must address the comments in the recommendations above." For projects 19-063, 19-069, and 19-074.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Okay, so we're gonna go right to we're gonna close our regular meeting and go to our public hearing. So we'll call our public hearing to order. The Brace Creek Watershed District's proposed 2020 budget and levy, including the watershed-wide property tax levy and special levies for the Bald Eagle Lake Water Management District, Anoka County 31 Water Management District, Anoka County Ditch 46 Water Management District, and the Anoka County Ditch 5362 Water Management District. The purpose of the hearing is to hear comments and take input from the parties having an interest in the proposed 2020 budget and levy. The levy will include a property tax levy on all properties located within the watershed district. It will also include additional special levies for 4 water management districts: the Bald Eagle Lake Water Management District, the Anoka County 31 Water Management District, Anoka County 46 Water Management District, and Anoka County 5362 Water Management District. At this time, we'll ask our interim administrator, Mr. Tomczyk, to provide a summary of the 2020 budget and the levy impact, as well as individual water management districts and levies. Nick, go ahead.
Yes. Board of Managers and the public watching and listening, you will see on page 38 of our packet that the staff have completed due diligence in noticing the public hearing in the various newspapers in a timely manner and consistent with statute. To the proposed 2020 budget, you'll see on your screen here the general fund lines and the associated budget with them. It's important for us to note, as we have in the past, that this is stems in part from your watershed management plan that you've been working on diligently, and that plan is out for 60-day comment, and we're looking forward to an adoption likely in the first quarter of 2020. And while that watershed management plan has some influence and defines the parameters of where the board would like the watershed to go, it is not definitive for the budget in this year or any subsequent year, and rather that you will consider the context at that time and what projects the district may move forward with. Further, within the budget, you'll see a number of line items which have no values in them. That was done specifically to capture some of what the watershed management plan encapsulated for future or potential projects or spending. And further, that we've added lines for those dedicated funds, specifically your watershed management districts, where you have charges specific to individual property owners that are receiving a benefit from it. So a distinction between that and the ad valorem. Beyond that, what does the proposed budget that we have before you intend to do? First and foremost, I guess, I would state that it intends that the managers themselves and the staff and the facilities that you have, that being the space that you lease and the vehicles and the phones and the computers and all that, is a part of the budget. And from there, the district completes various projects and programs. Starting on the bottom here, that includes the district facilities that we have, the inspection, operation, and maintenance of the district facilities, any necessary repairs to those facilities, and then our general interest in the Long Lake and Lock Lake sediment management program. Lake and stream management is another area the district addresses, managing curly leaf pondweed and common carp, a continuation of that program. Monitoring and management of the district's surface waters for water quality and rate and volume. And recognizing citizen interest through the water quality grant program when there are folks who want to participate in what the district's goals are. It also includes the obligations of the public drainage system, so ditch and creek maintenance. Within the current 2020 budget, we have allocated funds for the repair of 5362 as well as its dedicated fund on the landowners in the area, Anoka County Ditch 15 and Anoka Washington Judicial Ditch 4 for planning purposes, Anoka Washington Judicial Ditch 3, which is repair phase 1, Washington Judicial Ditch 2, branch 1 and 2 project. Hugo's intent to contract, if you will, on our behalf and maintain the public drainage system. You contribute an annual amount for their use of that work. Repair reports and studies for public drainage issues that may arise. And then, of course, the general maintenance and repair of the public drainage system, as well as the natural waterway management that Tom, as ditch inspector, undertakes as we find issues within the system. We do, of course, have a regulatory program to cover all the activities that occur within our large watershed. And so we manage the development and redevelopment of the landscape through that regulation, reviewing the applications, the completion of the work through inspection, and also on the front end with pre-project coordination with applicants. We also look to revise the regulations and guidance documents as the board sees fit to assist the landowners through the process. Further up, under our restoration of projects, our implementation of the Anoka County Chain of Lakes as reflected in the total maximum daily load allocations, the TMDLs for those areas. The Lower Rice Creek stabilization project that was just kicked off this late summer. Planning for Middle Rice Creek. We're gathering funds for the reimbursement of the Bald Eagle Lake Alm treatment that has taken place. The Bald Eagle Lake iron enhanced sand filter to be constructed. Continued development with our partners in the areas of Ramsey County Ditch 2, 3, and 5 watershed to find solutions to flooding and so forth in the area. Planning for regional management with our partners. Stormwater management cost sharing with municipalities as they have projects that come before them or the opportunities. Implementation of the Southwest Urban Lake Study. Master planning of critical or hotspots for stormwater areas that come up through our district-wide model. Coordination with municipalities on their capital improvement plans. Study and planning of groundwater issues and stormwater reuse where we may find it applicable or helpful to our goals. We have a communication and outreach fund as well. We do some supporting and training of citizens with significant interest in our business through the Master Water Steward Program. Obviously, we try and communicate as best we can the district board's position to all our elected officials and citizens. And as we wrap up the watershed management plan the end of this year and next year, and as well as the ability to flexibly update it as needed. We have some general infrastructure under information management to maintain the district boundary. Houston Engineering is doing some adjustment or looking at the validity of that boundary on Anoka County at this time. So any changes that come about through that or our other counties as we look at that. The district-wide model as our tool to understand the storages and conveyances that exist within the district and how we might manage the system. Our database and viewer maintenance, which is available on our website to citizens to look, and well as our communication with applicants for permits, and then overall our district website. So the budget includes, like I said, all the watershed management districts. The Bald Eagle Lake one includes a budget of $60,000 with a collection of charges in 2020 that being revenue of $58,050. Anoka County Ditch 31 Repair Project, Watershed Management District, has a collection of charges of $34,333. This project was completed in 2016, so we kind of self-financed that, and now we're getting paid back, if you will. Or those, I should say, those citizens are paying us back now, the benefited parties. Anoka County Ditch 46 Repair Project, Watershed Management District, that has a collection of charges intended at $46,859. That project was also completed in 2016. And then Anoka County Ditch 5362 Branch 2 Repair Project, Watershed Management District, that has a proposed budget of $35,000 with a collection of charges in 2020 at $34,879. The total expenditures that the district is looking at is $8,186,939 for 2020, as compared to $7,345,030 in 2019. Total revenue for 2020 is projected at $6,197,130, of which $5,181,376 is from the watershed-wide general property tax levy. It's seen as a 10% increase in property tax levy from 2019, and $1 million. And so the difference here, the $1,015,754 is coming from those watershed management districts. The fees, grants, and investment income, and the remaining balance to get to our $8.1 million is $1,989,809 from the district's fund balance. So the revenue that we're collecting ad valorem is a reflection of $38, estimated to be $38 in 2020 on a $200,000 home. From our past discussions, there were comments about this $200,000 home and its reality, or is it a good measure? What I would say to that is we've historically used $200,000 home. Where that originates from is likely each of the counties has a medium market value for a property, and it is for each one right around $200,000, maybe $210,000 today. So for consistency, we've used it again here. I'll note on page 42 of the packet, you'll see the small table in the middle of the page. So the estimated, or the property tax impact in 2018 was $36.30 on that $200,000 home, $36.81 in 2019, and then we're estimating for 2020 it would go to $38 on that $200,000 home. That's a change of $1.19 for the entire year on that property. With that, that's my presentation on the budget.
Okay. Any questions for Nick?
No questions, but comment. Very well done, very easily understandable in how you presented it, and a great job on staff and, of course, us for saving money for the district.
Okay, you're gonna have other comments, or?
Nope, just proceed on the backside of the.
Okay. All right, well, with that, then we're gonna, do we wanna do open public, or Kyle, were you gonna make a presentation today?
Yes. You want me to show that? That'd be great.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and all I had for you today, again, was just another look at, if I can find the right one here. Just a chart to take a look at again. Nick mentioned the tax impact, and that was. I can speak up, yes, sorry.
Thank you.
Closer to the mic here. We've talked about this before at a previous workshop, but just to kind of reiterate, the recent tax impact of our levy on properties within the watershed. Nick covered it for the last few years. We go back to 2017. We're still below the tax impact we had in 2017, which was up around $39. Our estimates this year, based on, I think only Ramsey County has published for us the taxable market value for 2020. So extrapolating from that, we're looking at about $37.92 as an estimated tax impact on the $200,000 home in 2020. So just wanted to share that with you, a little more detail. And then going back over the last decade or so, you can see where we are estimated to be here in 2020. We're actually quite a bit lower than we were back in 2012, 13, 14. So, you know, even despite the, we do have that increase in total levy that's being proposed this year. We've got about a 7% increase in taxable market value that has occurred over the last year, and with that, you know, that's really the main driver why, you know, as we've discussed, that the board is interested in increasing its levy to capture that without increasing the burden on residents. There is, again, that slight 3% additional increase that's proposed this year, which amounts to just over $1 a year on the median home. So just to share that with you, and that's all I've got to add.
Okay, well, before we start our public comments, we'll emphasize that the purpose of today's hearing is to receive comments from interested parties. It's not designed for discussion with the board members. We are here today to hear comments only. So if anybody in the audience would like to come forward, please do so. Name and address or who you represent for the record.
Good morning,
Morning.
Madam President and Board of Managers. My name is Mark Stotts. I'm with the City of Centerville. I'm the City Administrator and the City Engineer for the City of Centerville. I'm here today to just read into the record a letter I wrote and submitted to your staff late yesterday afternoon.
I did receive it too.
Oh, you did receive it? Okay,
Yeah.
great. Did the rest of the board get a copy of that?
No,
or
I just got it.
Okay. Either way, it's fine. I'll just read it into the record.
Start at that end if anybody wants to look at it.
This letter is to offer comment on the district's proposed levy for 2020. We understand that the board will be contemplating a 10% increase to the levy while spending down a significant portion of its excess fund balance. This increase alone is concerning, paired with last year's 7.5% increase. Additionally, residents of Centerville and others within the Centennial School District will see significant increases in their taxes due to a recently passed school levy. We ask the board to consider reducing this year's increase to a more modest amount. While we understand this particular public hearing's purpose, we also would like to offer our thoughts on a larger concern we have with the long-term budget projections associated with the implementation of the district's draft watershed management plan. During the watershed management plan development process, there has been a disconnect between the plan and any sort of annualized budget constraints. This is evidenced by the fact that the draft watershed management plan has no bottom line. Nowhere in the report can you find a total cost of the plan. Bringing this discussion back to the original intent of the public hearing on the 2020 proposed levy, we ask that the board thoughtfully consider this year's increase and seek to understand the sustainability of funding what is planned in your draft watershed management plan. And sincerely, Mark Stotts, City Administrator for Centerville. I know in the audience tonight, this morning, we have also the administrators from Circle Pines and Lexington as well. I'm not sure if they'll get up to speak, but I know that they have endorsed the content of this letter as well. Further, I'd just like to add that your staff has done a great job of responding to our questions, and one of the themes that I got from your staff was that the board's consideration of this increase has a lot to do with the increase in overall market value of property and wanting to, I think Kyle used the term, capture that. And I think, unfortunately, I think that's just different logic than most of us cities use when we're looking at our tax levies. To use the $200,000 home as a benchmark, and as your administrator mentioned, that, you know, that's historically, and so we're trying to compare apples to apples, but that doesn't really compare apples to apples in a very real sense, because what you're doing is you're setting that $200,000 at one spot and not understanding that my house doesn't actually stay at $200,000. If I owned a $200,000 house 10 years ago and you look at it and say, well, your taxes only went up, are going up $1.39 or whatever it is this year. No, my taxes are going up $1.39 plus whatever tax on the increase in value of that home is. And so my home value goes up. So to say it's $1.39 increase is just not, that's improper logic. And it's not what we look at as a city. We don't, the taxable market value will go up, it will go down. I didn't see on the graph anywhere that your levies went down during the recession. Certainly they were flat, and then we appreciated those. But when home values plummeted, we didn't plummet our budget. And nor would I expect you to plummet your budget during those times. It's just not a sustainable way to run an organization. You can't have a levy that goes up and down and up and down. So what we would like to see is, rather than, I think there's a bit of a crutch to say that home values are going up, therefore everyone can afford more. And I think that we need to think more in terms of what have we been asked by our citizenry and our taxpayers to do, and that is be responsible with our money and to make sure that we don't have these giant spikes. It was nice, your staff was nice enough to share the graph that you guys looked at a while back on a 10-year projection. And again, I understand the purpose of this hearing is to comment on this year's, but I'll bring it back, I promise. That long-term projection, we had 10%, 10%, 7.5, 7.5, 5, 5, and then at the end there was some zeros, right? So perhaps what we ought to look at is, rather than having those zeros at the end, evening that out a bit so that we don't have these giant increases right off the bat. And then I think when you look at that more linear projection, what does that look like? Is that gonna, I didn't do the math on that. I don't know if that's a 6% per year for that whole stretch. But certainly if you said to your citizenry, well, for the next 10 years, we'd like to have a 6% increase each year for the next 10 years. I'm not sure that's a sustainable way to do business. And so I think we need to look at this long term. We've done a great job. I've been involved in the TAC meetings. Kyle's done a wonderful job of presenting information there. But we've sort of done that in a vacuum without consideration of the budget. And we seem to sort of say, here's what we want to do. And we've got numbers for all those things, but we haven't added them all up and gone, whoa, I'm not sure we can afford all this. And that's where, and certainly I'll have an opportunity to comment on the watershed management plan too. But again, all these things tie together. This year's budget ties in, and ought to tie in. If it doesn't, we ought to make it tie in with your 10-year plan. And I'm concerned that your 10-year plan just isn't sustainable. What we're planning to do, and having limited, ability to just change the budget by 10% a year, year after year. So I think those are all my comments. I hope I've made myself clear. If there's any questions, I'd certainly stand for them. I understand this is not a discussion, so.
No, we're just taking comment
Yep.
because that's all go back to our work meetings.
Sounds
So
good.
we appreciate it. Thank you very
good.
much.
Thank you.
Anybody else
Thank
like
you.
to comment today? Please do. Name and address and who you represent for the records, please.
Good morning, Board. Niall Zickman, City Administrator for the City of Mounds View. So I just wanted to come today, express concerns over the 10% increase, especially on top of the 7.5%. It's difficult to determine from the pack of materials what the trend lines are. And so when I'm done, I'll make some specific requests, and we can just work through staff to get those. But I also want to share, we believe the City of Mounds View has one of the most confining charter provisions in the state of Minnesota. We're limited to a tax levy increase of 2% plus inflation. And that effectively keeps us under 5% because inflation hovers between 1.8 and 2.2, 2.3. We'd have no ability to do anything like this. And as I listened to your interim director, detail what your budget composes everything we do, your operations. And I didn't hear anything special, that might be driving the 10%. So that kind of gets into, I always like to seek first to understand, and so I'm here today mostly to gather more information and to just express the concern at this time. But if it'd be possible, and I'll again send these in writing so you don't necessarily have to remember them, 3 years previous actual, when we just have the chart on what it is, I don't have a reference on that. And then I didn't hear any new special additional programs, and so if it was 5% for your operational stuff going up 5% and another 5% because you're doing a bunch of projects or new stuff, that would be helpful for us to understand. And then lastly, if it was a 5%, what wouldn't we have done? So it'd be the reverse of that equation. So I'll just close at this point, just let you know we got the concerns and want to learn more.
We appreciate you coming. Thank you.
Madam President, I missed his name. What was your last name, sir?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll give you the first name too because it'll get spelled wrong. Nyle, and then Zikmund.
Zygmunt. Niall Zygmunt.
Good bohunk name.
All right.
Did you read this last? Sorry.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Name and address, please.
Patrick Antonin, I'm the city administrator of Circle Pines.
Okay.
So I just want to echo the statements that have been made by my fellow administrators. A 10% increase is hefty. If we did that as a city, we would have a lot of angry citizens at our public hearing, and it is concerning that the only angry citizens are the administrators. So that should tell you something, that this is concerning, especially in, we're in Anoka County here. Well, we're in Ramsey right now, but in Anoka County, you have to be transparent and everything, and it's really difficult to understand what you're actually spending the money on. So I'm concerned with your budget process. I think it should be more open and transparent, and I'm very concerned with this 10% increase, and with the 7.5% increase last year. I mean, the taxable market value is going up. I mean, your tax levy should be going down. I mean, ours is, Centerville, yours probably is, Lexington, Nile can't raise his levy, so it's tough. So I just really would hope you guys would, and everyone would consider, making some modifications to the budget, and hopefully you'll see a lower increase to this next fiscal year. So,
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your
Patrick,
comments.
would you repeat your last name again?
Antonin, Antonen.
Anybody else? Anybody else would like to speak?
Morning, Board. Bill Petracek, City of Lexington, City Administrator. I was invited to go with these gentlemen to come and make comments at this meeting as well. I can't speak for anybody else in the Rice Creek Watershed District. Lexington is a built-out community, low to moderate income. We generally try to keep our levy between 0 and 2%. That's the way it's been the last probably 10 years increase. One of the things we've been trying to do to give our low to moderate income community over the last few years, we've been trying to give them a tax break by redeveloping the community, bringing some new value into the community. And so when we're with this redevelopment, we have some high density housing going in. We're trying to spread it out a little bit more, and with entities like that are going up 10% with their levy, we're kind of working against each other. And so we're just trying to help out our community ourselves. Again, I can only speak for Lexington. I can't speak for anybody else, but I would just ask the board to consider maybe a different plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else like to speak? No? Okay, well, just to say thank you for everybody coming, and we appreciate the information. That's why we have public hearings. So we certainly will take into consideration your thoughts. And with that, we're gonna close our meeting and go to open mic
Close the hearing.
And we're gonna open up our meeting and go to open mic. Is there anybody in there that'd like to comment on something other than the budget? Anybody? With that, we're gonna move on to items requiring board action.
I think that's me, huh?
Page 43, yeah.
Madam President, I move to consider the check register dated August 28, 2019, in the amount of $329,441.03 prepared by Redpath and Company.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, discussion and information, staff reports. Anything on the staff? Anybody like to comment or ask the engineer? Anybody? Oh,
Way in the back.
whoa. Come forward, please.
May I come up and make an addition to my staff report?
You certainly can.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Thank you, President Preiner and Board of Managers. I realized after I had submitted my staff report that between when my staff report was submitted and your meeting today, the deadline for accepting applications for the district administrator would come and go. And so I thought I would take about 2 minutes today just to kind of refresh our minds and prepare us for what's about to happen next. We have the applications, the accepting application time period closed on Friday. We have some applications for you to review and consider and provide staff with your choices for discussing and interviewing. So what will happen next is Teresa is helping me. We're going to put together the packets. Each of the applicants will be assigned a number as well, because as a group, you did decide that when you are discussing them, at least initially, you are going to go by the number. Once you have that information, once you've reviewed and we kind of have this, kind of short list, again, at this point, it will still all be kind of confidential who the applicants are. And then I believe we'll have this at the next workshop and we'll finalize your requests for who on staff. You would also, staff and consultants, you'd like to review those lists as well and kind of help you fine tune. We'll be working with our attorneys to make sure we're following all of our open meetings requirements as we go along. And then at the time that you have narrowed it down to the people you would like to interview, we will both email them and give them a phone call to invite them for an interview, but let them know that that will be part of the open meetings process. And then we will kind of go from there. So hopefully you will see, I think we will send those packets obviously in the mail so that Manager Waller can get them kind of at the same time as everyone else. I can provide them digitally too, can't I? Okay, so we can send them to you as PDFs as well with their numbers assigned. And I would just make the request that everyone be very wary that this is a public process, and we are bound by the open meetings laws. So if the board members could refrain from emailing the group as a whole and make especially because one of the members is not on the email chain. So if you can send emails to me and then we can, or to Teresa, and then we can kind of communicate out so that we don't run afoul of any of our regulations. Any questions?
Any questions?
No, but I know
Wonderful.
you're going to be busy.
Oh, it's going to be fun. So,
I know, you're doing
all
a
right.
good
Thank you
job.
very much.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. Okay, any other staff members' reports? Anything? September calendar?
President Preiner? In regards to the calendar on page 87, staff has canceled the September 4th CAC meeting. The rationale for that is there were no action items for that meeting, although we will be sharing the draft CAC operations out to the committee for comment, and as well as the members to consider whether or not they'd like to be reappointed. And so that, we'll just do that by email, and then when they reconvene at the next meeting.
So when
Can
would there
have
be
this-
the next one for them?
October, first Wednesday in October, I assume.
Correct.
Okay,
So September 4th is canceled.
okay. Do we want to move one up and I should take that, or is everybody stay in line, everybody's good?
I think stay in line, because I know I would do
suspect you that for
November.
us.
Okay, line's fine.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I hit the jackpot.
Yeah.
On a holiday week. But-
I think Beth maybe would like to say something
Okay,
in the same realm.
go
and
ahead.
I have a follow-up item as well.
All right.
It's also likely we're proposing to the CAC, based on their requests and discussions, that we would have a December meeting and not a January meeting. And so kind of looking at that on your schedules as to who takes those meetings. The regularly scheduled January meeting would have been the 1st, so we would have moved it to the 8th. But the CAC, as we were kind of working through the operating procedures, felt like it might be best served to have a December meeting annually and not have those January meetings. So, because that was hard for people coming back from holidays. So, as you work your schedules, keep that in mind.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Just one thing to add related to the September calendar. Keep in mind it hasn't been published yet, but you will likely be receiving an invite from the City of New Brighton to attend a rededication ceremony at Hanson Park. The date, I believe, has been set, subject to change, but I believe it's September 24th. I do not have a time yet. I'll be there. We'll be inviting some other, folks who need to be there as well, some state folks and representatives, et cetera. But just wanted to pass that
Add
along.
on.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
President Preiner, if I could, I just have three small notes here. One, we got the lease back, so we're now in fully executed. We'll expire 10/31/2025, so that's in place.
We have to think of that for a while.
Yes. Staff have been approached by the city of Fridley, asking about dredging of Lock Lake and that sort of thing. I'll be working with your consultants, and we'll look to bring that back to a workshop for some discussion. And then beyond that, in regards to the budget, just to note that you will have a public meeting, not a public hearing, but a public meeting on December 11th in regards to the budget, if you should consider any changes.
Okay. Will that be, when is the?
That's a regular
That's the
meeting.
deadline for that, then, to be
That-
submitted?
Yeah.
That is a regular meeting.
I
Yep.
think December 15th might be the real deadline, but that's our last meeting.
Because that would only give us one more, okay.
Madam President,
Yes,
if I could just review, under the watershed law, you need to adopt your budget and set your levy by September
that's
15th.
what I thought, yeah.
And then the truth and taxation law for all local units of government provides for an additional public input process. So you'll have that informational meeting and can receive additional comments. And then if you wish, you could reduce your budget further and levy by the end of December.
But you can't increase.
Right.
Okay, very good, thank you. Anything else?
Madam President, I don't know, can I comment on what we heard today and what I'd like to suggest we consider for a workshop? Is that-
Well, we should, can we discuss it after they're gone like that?
You just want an addition to the workshop that we're going to have next month?
Yeah, I'm just gonna have a suggestion first.
Okay, go ahead.
The suggestion would be, I think we know that the property taxes are going up to something like 7.5%, I think. Which means we've really, based on how I look at the world, we've really only looked at increasing the property taxes by 2.5%. So my question is, we've already done a bare bones. What would a bare bones be if we did it at 7.5%, taking out of new projects that were gonna benefit our partners?
That's
The cities.
gonna be my suggestion.
Because I don't, we can't, that's where we're doing something beyond what we have to do.
Yep.
Yep.
We wanna do that, so at least we can defend ourselves and say, well, here's what we're doing extra.
So,
Well, I think that's definitely,
That's
Hi
good.
there.
I think that's something we'll have to look at.
I
Madam
don't think we have to
President,
say it again for the record.
No,
so.
okay.
Madam President, just to add on to that, a couple of things for clarification. First of all, Madam President, you and I have voted for a reduction in the general taxes here back in 2008, just so that did happen during the recession. And I guess what was the other comment I had that I felt was factually
It'll come to you.
misleading it, but just there are things we have done in the past here for this, and I think so a workshop and having another chat so we could put out a conversation back and forth. would be a good idea.
Well, I think it's a good thing, and it's pretty simple in my mind. You just reduce services, reduce taxes. So
Yeah.
if that's and I'll tell you, the school issue is hot, and there are a lot of new taxes coming online, so
Well,
I'm not surprised to see these folks here.
Well, yeah, and I also noted that these are four of the smallest communities in the district.
Yep. So we will think about that when we do our meeting.
Dare I add to that? Smallest communities in our district, wholly within the district, might be a good point. So I'm not sure how we compare to other watershed districts where cities share multiple governance, if you will. And beyond that, just a good portion of the budget amount, we were forecasting out what was going to occur to your fund balance to say consistent with your adopted policy. And so if we don't do this today, the implications in the coming years is a large part of what you were trying to prevent. That's not to say there isn't a feasible alternative, but just to note it.
Madam
We're
President.
not supposed to be discussing this, I thought.
But just one more comment, thank you very much, to point out about the fund balance, because that was the other item that was factually incorrect. Yes, there are zeros in those 10 years, but if you look at the line up above where the fund balance is and where the graft is, you'll see there's a need for, at that rate, for some increases, even though there wasn't a projection put in there for those last 3 years.
Okay, we're gonna continue this meeting at our
Yeah.
workshop. And anybody else have managers' updates? Andrew Bradley, welcome back.
Thank you, glad to be back, glad to be healthy. I will be missing the September 25th meeting. I will send you an email explaining that.
Okay.
I'll be missing some meetings too in October. I'm having surgery, so I'm not sure how long, but.
Okay, and so send us the dates. Barbara?
I'm here. That's all.
Until,
I have no report.
Manager
well,
Waller?
somebody's gonna be here.
Well, good luck at the surgery.
Thank
That's
you.
for first of all. And, second, yesterday I received a telephone call from Mr. Tim Nowitski. That's Newuske.
John, could you speak up?
You'll remember that this gentleman came to us and talked to us about the north half of what we call Lost Lake in Matamidi some time ago. So apparently there's been, he's sent in some complaints to the Minnesota Duty Officer Report made on Sunday, the 18th of August. That's a portion of the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency concerning the lack of erosion control along the County Road 12 in Willerny and Matamidi area that's going on, and the impact it's had through Washington Lake, Lost Lake, and then eventually to White Bear. So he also had made a complaint about the sediment problems that have been washing down there from to the federal government under the Clean Water Act. Apparently you can do that online. So my question to me that came, and I'll check with the staff, is gee, it's unusual that we haven't heard about this ourselves. We're not on their list, for example, you know, on the checklist of where he sent those in. So we should, I don't know if that's a person that was taking care of that for us, I recall, was the Ramsey County Saltwater Conservation District inspection consultant we hired. So maybe we should check into that a little bit more and find out what's going on, and that's a point there. The other thing I'd point out about this is that, you know, we use this terminology lake as nomenclature rather loosely here in Minnesota. Everything we have, it's every pothole, it seems, gets to be a lake.
Yeah.
And in the case of like Lost Lake, for example, really what that is a flooded wetland, or a wetland that wasn't, before the public inventory done in the 80s, that wasn't a lake because it didn't qualify for meandering, and it has property lines in it, you know, it's owned. And so that's become used at that time, was not uncommon to use those for stormwater ponds. And so in practicality, a lot of these, quote, lakes that we have around here are really old stormwater ponds or flooded wetlands that have become. And so I think it's important for us to kind of differentiate that in the future as we go along, so we understand what we're dealing with. It's not necessarily a lake under the definition that used to be meandering, because these people own property underneath it. So now it's a flooded wetland, see? So anyways, that's, and in actuality, its purpose and use is stormwater now. It's not, and that's why it's a flooded wetland. So I just make that comment about it, and so investigate this, and I'll talk to Nick and Tom, and we'll check into it, see what's going on.
Yeah. Okay, anyone else?
Madam President, maybe I can respond to Manager Waller's comments just a little bit, just for a little bit of background. Related, and Manager Waller, you had a question about the communication, once the landowner had made a complaint to the Pollution Control Agency. One thing to keep in mind is that they have their own separate permitting process, the NPDS or permit, or the construction stormwater permit, and that's triggered anytime you have a project that has a disturbance of greater than 1 acre. And so they have their own permitting process that's essentially completely separated from, Rice Creek's permitting process. I don't know the district staff experience that they've had with any communications regarding that, but I'm not aware of any obligation by the Pollution Control Agency to inform district staff when they've received a complaint or anything like that. So
I agree.
That's one thing to note about that. Then also regarding Manager Waller's comment about the lake differentiation on lakes and consideration, and I'll just note that, that is something that is in your plan as discussion on how different types of open water bodies or lakes are managed, and so we do have that discussion within the plan. It is something that district staff has already had some differentiation there, and I think that we're even more clearly defining that within the watershed plan in its newer version.
Good, we'll get to that discussion then. All right, anything else?
Well, if we do 4 more
Motion to
minutes,
adjourn?
Lewis loses the bet on an hour.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll make, so move adjournment.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.